Hi there. How are you doing? Welcome to the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship's Global Industry Talks. I'm Sadia Davis. I'm the director for the center, and it is my joy and pleasure to bring to you a pretty informative talk today with some of our entertainment industry's known entertainment lawyers to answer some of the questions that you may have around your contracts. But before I bring them on, I want to share something with you. The Center for Creative Entrepreneurship was established out of 2112. 2112 Studio, I call it 2112 Studios, is the largest co-working space and creative incubator in the world. And when I say world, I'd love to say it, but it's true. It's over 20,000 square feet. It's adjacent to Fort Knox Studio, which is 140,000 square feet, and we have a 7,000 square foot hangar where TV film projects are made. So out of that legacy of creative businesses and informing and providing resources, the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship was born. So we are the nonprofit of 2112. And for that reason, I'm excited to share with you that throughout the year, you will hear that we have some ongoing programs that we've made free. Without all of the industries sitting down, it's kind of changed a bit, but I just want to read something because I don't want to get it wrong. But we have an incredible Diversify Scholarship. And although we've met the requirements for now, I just want you guys to know about it because it's something that will allow individuals to take part in our resources and have access to not just the 2112 Creative Incubator and Co-working Space, but IMHub or IFA or the Hatchery. So the Diversify Scholarship, in an effort to further the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, is established a commitment to diversity, excellence, and creating a more inclusive entrepreneurial creative sector. The CCE proudly announces the 2020 CCE Diversify Scholarship. So every year, 10 scholars will be accepted to have the opportunity to receive a scholarship covering up to 12 months of access to incubators and innovation hubs throughout the region. The CCE Diversify Scholarship will support women, communities of color, and other historically marginalized creative entrepreneurs. It's pretty exciting, right? So I just want you guys to be aware of some of the resources that we have out there. And for those of you who are not familiar, you can always find Artist Relief up to date on our Center for Creative Entrepreneurship website and our Facebook page. So right now, with all that being said, let's get to it. Let's bring on our counsel, our entertainment attorneys. We're going to introduce Tom Levins with Mandel Minkus. And right there you are.
Oh, Sadia.
Dave, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to bring in.
Great to see you again.
It's always good to see you. I understand you're in Utah?
I'm in Park City right now. Yeah. And it's snowing.
Oh, and it's snowing. Okay. Well, I can say that I did have the pleasure of going to Sundance one time, and it was so much fun to see you there. So we're going to bring on Lisa Bonner. And Lisa Bonner is Bonner Law, PC. Hi there, Lisa.
Hi, Sadia. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you. And you're in Atlanta.
I am.
Okay. Well, we're happy to have you. I'm going to go ahead and bring on Jeff Becker, who's with us here in Chicago. And Jeff Becker is with Swanson, Martin, and Bell. So
I am. Thank you.
You are. So how are you guys feeling? Let's talk a little bit about, today the subject matter really is the business of entertainment. And the first thing that I put out to some folks are your contracts in order? So before people start logging on, I'm going to have each one of you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what drives you in your business to continue to be an attorney, and specifically entertainment, and possibly which area of entertainment law that you tend to focus. So Tom, let's get started with you.
Okay. Well, my interest in this area goes all the way back to, my decision to go to law school many, many years ago. I've always been interested in areas of expression, whether that's artistic or religious or political. And I always had an interest in popular culture, principally in the music side. I worked for a record company when I was in law school. I did promotion for A&M Records, but my biggest influence has been the fact that my first job out of law school was being the first attorney director for lawyers for the creative arts in Chicago, where I had experience in film, television, music, theater, writers, publishers, visual artists, the whole range of expression. And that really has defined my practice ever since that time. There's a 16-year period during the time that I've been in private practice that I left private practice. I was with a series of startups in the entertainment area, a record company, a digital music company, and a television production company. So I've had direct operational responsibility for startups and understand what people who are involved with 2112 are all about, as far as understanding the finances and the risks and the rewards and the motivations and all that is necessary to build a successful company.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, and that definitely helps people understand, like how one even gets started. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi. Okay, so my name is Lisa Bonner, and I practice entertainment, all facets of entertainment. I provide counsel for large media companies, film distribution companies, music, television, film, independent artists, and producers. So I run the gamut, and I got started as an entertainment lawyer after 2 years of litigation in Los Angeles, where I like to say I grew up professionally there. I got my start after litigation at I'm dating myself, but it was back when the internet was first started, and we were trying, the world was really trying to figure out how to get content onto this little 1x1 screen. And we had T1s at the time. So I worked with a digital production company, and we were highly funded, and we had, all facets of entertainment, and executives came over and helped build out this production company that was. And so that's how I got my start. And we did, like I said, we did everything from dealing with music, live music shows, records, recording artists, producers. We did everything from union to non-union shows. And because it was so new, I was involved with SAG, helping to write the side letter agreement, because at the time, because the internet was so new, we only had side letter agreements for actors to appear on in gaming. So that's how long ago it was. There was no real digital content around at the time. We were really making history. And so my practice has continued to evolve since then. And like I said, I do provide counsel for people in all facets of entertainment. And also, I think one of my favorite things to do now is I provide counsel for, this is why I'm here in Atlanta. I provide a lot of do a lot of production work for TV shows that tape here in Atlanta. Probably a lot of them that you've seen. So that's it.
Okay, well, we can't really ask you who your clients are, so it's kind of fun.
No, but I mean, it's just, that's where because the tax credits are so great here, everybody has relocated to Georgia. So it's really been, the tax credits, when they came out in 2015, it kind of gave LA a run for its money, and here we are. So
that's right. Well, we're doing it here in Illinois too, which is a perfect segue to Jeff Becker. Awesome. Talk to us a little bit about what keeps you going and what got you started, Jeff.
You got it. Well, what got me started, if you go back to the early days of elementary school and high school and whatnot, I was musician, so to speak. I played an amazingly crappy guitar and crappy piano, but I always loved to be on stage and act, and I would have loved to have been an artist. It's just that I was really risk averse to the idea of making it in the creative space as an artist. So I did what any good Jewish boy from the northwest suburbs of Chicago does. I went to law school, and I came out of law school. I was working at a commercial intellectual property litigation shop, a small place, and just doing normal commercial litigation that came in the door, whatever my boss gave me to do. But then one day, a guy walked in, and he sat down with me and said, "Jeff, I was making dinner for my kids, and my son was playing Grand Theft Auto, And he paused the video game and said, "Dad, isn't that your song on the video game?" And sure enough, it was. He was a house musician in Chicago back in the 80s, and he had written a very prolific speech that's used a lot in dance music even today. And it had been sampled and remixed a whole bunch without his permission. And that's copyright infringement, right? So I helped him out, something I'd done a whole lot of times before, but this was different because it was music and video games, and it was really cool. And I said, wow, if I got him a few bucks, he was very happy, but that kind of led me on this path where I said I can work in the creative space, but also get a paycheck and benefits and the security I needed for the mortgage I didn't have yet and pay for the kids I didn't have yet. But it gave me that sense of, let me get back into the creative space. So I set out at that time to start building a business helping creatives. I switched firms. This is going back about 11 years ago around that time. Met with everybody in the city of Chicago that I could that did anything in this space, including Tom Levins, who met me and said, heck, I'm staying in Utah. I don't want to be around that guy anymore. But learned as much as I could along the way and took on a lot of work from lawyers for the creative arts at the beginning, because who better to go to than those who don't have to pay you to get them to let you do their work. Got a lot of really cool projects at the beginning, and that led to one paying client after another. Flash forward a decade, and now we have a fully flourishing entertainment practice group at the firm in Chicago that helps all facets of entertainment as well, from film and television and literary and especially music. My focus is a lot in the music space as well as independent film. And the cool thing for me, I think, is that having done it in the Midwest, I had to learn all different things. And I started as a litigator. So we still do a substantial amount of litigation, some really cool cases. But then a lot of the clients that I had helped along the way had said, hey, can you help me not screw up what I screwed up? Thanks for helping me unscrew what I screwed up. Help me not screw up in the first place. And that kind of began the transactional side of things that we've expanded quite substantially over the last decade.
That's fantastic, Jeff. You bring up a good point, and I think right on tailing off of how can we unscrew what we screwed up. I actually want to talk to you a little bit about how people right now, and you, of course, we're not asking you to share your client's information, but maybe some of your experiences with where a particular client's contracts weren't written properly, or we'll get to the act of God clause. And there's a proper way of saying that, you all know, and you'll correct me, but you know what I mean? Like, let's talk about what are some of the contracts that maybe have been brought to you or that you're aware of that didn't protect, and I wouldn't say that your clients weren't protected, because I would imagine that you protect your clients, but maybe you can share some stories that have been shared with you.
Sure. Are you asking me or
I'm
any of
asking,
us?
it's a free for all. And when you start talking, the other ones will just listen, and then we'll jump in. And Eric, our EW producer on the back end, will move you around.
I think maybe the best place to start with this is in a more broad, generic space, and I'm sure that Tom and Lisa can focus in on certain types of specific issues that they've seen. But I think that the biggest problem I see is when clients either don't have written contracts at all, or they do have written contracts and they're extremely vague or unclear on what the parties' obligations or rights are. And that's where it gets a little scary, because to me, a written contract isn't intended to be a bad thing. People talk about lawyers over lawyering things. I think the idea should be that a contract is a roadmap. It's a memorialization of the parties' agreement. And if the parties have been able to talk to each other about what their intentions are, then all we're really doing is helping memorialize it in a way that should something come up in the future that they need to look back on, they could use the contract to clarify or refresh their memory on what they agreed to. And I like to say that people should enter their contracts when everyone's happy and hungry. Happy because nothing bad has happened yet, and hungry because nothing good has happened yet. That's when they're all humble, right? And so to me, lately especially, we're seeing provisions in contracts that either weren't written well, were taken off the internet, and therefore aren't actually applicable to the parties' intentions in the specific case we're looking at. And they're leaving us trying to unscrew what they didn't get done right in the first place.
Yeah, I would second that. One of the things that to further expand on what Jeff said, a lot of people, have the best intentions in the very beginning, right? We are working together and we're going to get to it. And, either the project takes off and they don't get around to it, or in the instance, if it's not collaborative or somebody gives them and are supposed to give them an agreement and they don't, it's a situation where, oh, I don't want to rock the boat and I don't want to, ask for, and these are people who are early on, obviously. And so one of the things that I try to tell people is, you want to, by asking for a contract, if you don't have it and you haven't gotten it and then people are expecting you to start work, that is something that you really should pull back and ask for, because again, you're just asking for something that's due you. Excuse me. It's a lot of pollen here. But it's also something that's for your best interest. And I always tell people you can't build a house on a foundation of mud. The bottom line, everything has to be set out and really memorialized along the ways of at least what you were either speaking about or what your intentions are, and the lawyers will figure it out as we go. So don't look at the contract as a bad thing. I always say it's something that really is built for your protection. And one of the other things that I love that people come to me and say a lot, a client of mine regularly, I'm sure the other lawyers have gotten this as well. Oh, you know what? I just want you to take a quick look at this contract. It's only 3 pages, or it's only a page and a half. And I always tell them, those are the ones that kind of scare me a little bit. Not that we're looking for a contract that is, 80 pages and just full of legalese. But the shorter the contract does not necessarily mean the better, because there are oftentimes many, many, many things that are left out, such as an assignment clause or a force majeure clause, and look at us now, or certain things that are really, really that are really applicable to what you really would need to go to. So, don't be afraid to ask. It is your, if it's something that you are looking for, absolutely start with it. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And shorter is not always better when it comes to contracts, and neither is longer. I mean, it doesn't need to be drawn out, but it does need to address what it needs to address, and however long that is how long it is. So,
yeah.
Well, I would agree that what I see most is trying to resolve problems that arise out of the lack of or something in writing. I've seen some very predatory agreements with very, very bad outcomes for people. And that certainly exists in the entertainment sphere. But I think the biggest thing we're typically dealing with is the absence of agreements. And in addition to some of the functions that agreements play that Lisa and Jeff have mentioned, I think in the beginning, there is the exercise of creating an agreement is one that pressure tests the relationship. If somebody is reluctant to enter an agreement in writing, that's a big red flag. And so it's one of these things that you can measure the extent of somebody's commitment by raising that issue. I think that in addition, you use the written agreement as an instrument to overcome a statutory outcome. And by that, I mean, there are many instances, particularly in the copyright area, where the copyright law will dictate what the outcome will be in the absence of a written agreement. So you can draft around that, and that's really important in many instances that be done. But unless you have something in writing, you're not going to be able to overcome that statutory outcome.
Right.
The other thing that is really important is that you always need to be thinking ahead. I'll just use this in the example in the film side, and that is that whatever project that you're involved with is going to end up with some kind of property. And if you want to exploit that property, if you want to finance that property, you're going to have a lot of things in place that people on the other side of the transactions are going to need to see in order to do a transaction with you, in order to take money from investors, in order to get a bank loan, in order to have a distribution agreement, in order to sell a property. You're going to have to show that there's been this collection of underlying rights that roll up into a single document, not document, a single
package of
property.
documents. Yeah.
In documents, that's right. So you've got to be thinking that through. If anybody's going to produce a film for the first time, I would recommend highly that they take a look at a distribution agreement and see what the delivery requirements are in the end, because it's really extensive. and it's very technical, but there's so much documentation in there and so many things that need to be proved up to that distributor. So anyway, I just throw those out as reasons why you have to be very attentive about putting the documents together.
Sure.
We can keep rolling with whatever you want, Saudi, unless you have a question for us.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, you know, that's a good point that Tom's bringing up, because, you know, we laugh because we've got, an incredible tax incentive in Atlanta, and Chicago's got a pretty aggressive one here where, you know, we've got a tax incentive per episode for TV. That's a huge, you know, pretty aggressive tax incentive for Illinois, and it's exciting. But because of the incentives that Illinois has, you find a lot of draw to Illinois, either to make films or people who are in Illinois deciding to make films and not really understanding in that indie world how to properly protect themselves, or, to Tom's point, if they're a little uncomfortable signing some kind of a contract, yeah, that's a bit of a red flag. And it's better to know front end rather than you're down the line and it's like, yeah, it's a little late.
And further to that point, the deliverables are very extensive. And I was talking to a lawyer today, another lawyer who is a litigator, and here in Atlanta, but we get this all the time. You know, he doesn't do particularly entertainment law, but has represented, you know, business aspects of entertainment. And he said to me, you know, I was deciding to pick up, you know, to really come out of here, this pandemic better than where I started. So I said, why not, you know, try entertainment law. And I'm like, you know, and I think I'm just going to produce a film. I have this idea and, you know, do you want to help me? And I'm like, no, because it's a lot of work. I mean, I produced three documentaries that have been on television. And I want to tell people it's not film and TV, even as a lawyer or the producer or what any of this, whether it's music or whatever it is, there's so much that goes into it. So don't ever, you know, I implore people, even the lawyer, I said, you know, it's not something that you can just get into or everybody would do it. There are books that help you. There are, you know, courses and things to take, but I really, whatever side of that you're on, I think everybody should be, really not well-versed, but should have a functional knowledge of what it is that you're doing, because you don't know what you don't know if you don't do at least some research. You know, you don't have to be a lawyer. Like when I talk to my tax lawyer, I'm not a tax lawyer, but at least I want to understand. If you're buying a house, same thing, whatever it is, you want to have a functional understanding of it so you don't get taken advantage of, or you can ask the right questions with your lawyer, because we're only as good as the conversations that we can have with our clients. So it's really important also just to educate everyone, yourselves as well, to whatever degree that you can.
Education's a huge part of it, Lisa. You're absolutely right. You know, a lot of what I do as a lawyer, a lot of my colleagues do, is we speak on panels like this, on substantively educational panels, continuing legal education panels, of which I've probably observed Tom 20 different times, even as a lawyer, educating myself, because laws.
You always have the best questions, Jeff. You always have the best questions.
Thank you. The fact of the matter is, and the way that I've described this, having been on both the litigation and the transactional side, is that lawyers, we're a lot like dentists. You know, no one wants to go to the dentist. No one wants to go see lawyers, you know, but I'll tell you this, going to see a dentist for a cleaning every 6 months is a lot less expensive and a lot less painful than a root canal. And in our world, litigation is essentially the equivalent of a root canal. And so, you know, to me, I can look at this from the film side and from the music side. I can think of like young bands who are getting started who just want to go out and they're going to spend money on their van and on an amp and a new guitar, but they don't want to pay a lawyer to help them work through the terms of their own internal agreement, right? Or filmmakers, they don't want to pay the lawyer to go create whatever production agreement it might be, so they go get it off the internet and they come to us later after it's already signed. And so to me, part of what we do is the documentation, but a lot of it's education. A lot of it is just making sure you understand the industry you're working in. And to Tom's point earlier, that packet of documents he's talking about that we would create for you, you know, The art, sure, you can watch it on a TV screen or in a theater or listen to it on your headphones, but that's only part of your asset. The other part you can't see until it's written into a contract. And those documents have so much of an impact on what you can actually do with the art after it's created. Otherwise, it's just a nice hobby that you can share with your family and friends. No one's going to insure it. No one's going to distribute it unless you can stand behind it with paper.
That's right. Chain of title. There you go.
There it is.
We've got our first question, and we're getting close to wrapping up here. So thank you for asking. How do I know if a lawyer is right for me? Can a lawyer that handles music also handle my film contracts too?
If they understand the areas that you're dealing with, they can. And I think the best way to know is to speak with them, talk with them. Most good lawyers will take some time on the phone to talk with you and answer your questions to get you to the level of comfort you need with them. Ask for referrals, ask for references. And you know, my best clients' referral sources are my existing clients, right? So
absolutely.
Ask around.
Yep. And one of the things that, I mean, I happen to do all facets of entertainment because that's how I was trained. But there are lawyers who are squarely in music. There are lawyers who are squarely, you know, in film and TV. So again, you have to ask the right questions further to what Jeff said. And a smart lawyer, a smart person will tell you what they are equipped and not equipped to do. Because it's no fun, and we certainly don't want to be the ones responsible for malpractice and again, even if it doesn't rise to that level, the only thing that we have in this industry is our reputation.
That's right.
And, you know, and our clients are our calling cards. And if you don't know what you're doing, the other lawyer will know in a second. And that is one of the things that when I first started practicing after I left the production company, I went into private practice for a bit. And that is the first thing that the lawyer said, you know, he said, don't ever try and take off more than you can chew, because we've all been in this space a long time. So if there's somebody new to the table that comes, we know it. They don't have to tell us anything. We know it. And if you don't know, it's fine, but let us know, as opposed to making, questions or making assumptions that are not there. So ask we don't want to be the learning curve, and a smart lawyer will tell you what we can and cannot do. And most of us have a very, very wide referral service. Yeah. Because we have been in this industry for so long and tend to go to the same people as referrals. So
which is why I'm so excited, Lisa Bonner, that you're here joining us, because I wanted to inject some new people into this conversation, and knowing that our industries, especially now that everybody's sitting down, we have this medium, right? Which makes us more connected and global. So it's more of an opportunity to develop your practices that are not, like Tom happens to be in Park City, Utah right now, which is where Sundance happens. But he also has his office here in Chicago. So there's a question, and we're going to start to wrap up here, but I want to address two things before we do. So let's ask this question. I don't have any money. I mean, are there lawyers that help broke artists? Of course there are. Let me answer that for you. Jeff brought him up earlier. What is it? It's the attorneys for artists
in Chicago.
Lawyers for the creative arts in Chicago. And then just about every
city has one. Yeah, they have them in Georgia. It's an advocacy program. California Lawyers for the Arts in California, Georgia Lawyers for the Arts here. I mean, there are, but also, again, what I would say again is make sure that you have done your research, because don't go to a lawyer and just say, hey, I got this film deal. Could tell me everything I need to know. We can only help you, especially when you're going to the California Lawyers for the Arts. So we're volunteering our time, and not we're going to treat you any differently than we would if you were a paying client. But in order to get the most out of what you are, the limited time you're going to get with that lawyer, make sure that you've done your research, you have your questions, and make sure that you are just ready to go and come with pen and paper and just be ready to learn and have your questions answered.
Yeah.
So I see a question at the bottom.
Yeah, before we ask that question, because I got to say this. Even if you're working with your attorney who you are paying, Do your research, because they do charge by the hour. So get as much information for yourself to reduce the amount of work they have to do. I mean, really.
Well, we charge differently. Not every a lawyer charges by the hour. And I just want to be clear, there are certain different ways. But as we've been saying throughout this entire conversation, it's imperative to do your research. Whatever you're doing, you're not going to go buy a car and not know anything about the car and the make and model. So it goes for everything. Same if you're buying a dishwasher. Same thing.
I think it really plays into what you all spoke about in the very beginning, and it's that relationship, right? The relationship that you're building with that individual. And I think that there's a certain amount of respect that you show when you do your research, and you're able to provide so that you come to the table, because time is of value. So hi, Danita Patterson. She says, I have you guys can go for it. I think you guys could see it. Tom, do you want to address?
Yeah, let me make a pitch for Chicago Media Angels, which I've been part of from the beginning, which may be one of the entities that did approach you about purchasing your tax credit. This is a very conventional type of transaction at this point. This is something that most filmmakers, at least in my experience, take into account when they're doing their budgeting, that they are going to sell their tax credit. Of course, if the tax credit is useful to yourself, then hold on to it for 100% of the benefit. But it's generally not going to be the case that
dollar for dollar.
You're going to have a tax obligation that the credit is going to be exhausted with what your obligation is. So if you haven't checked out Chicago Media Angels, by all means do so. It's a membership organization in Chicago that finances independent film and television projects. So that's good. So I'm glad you brought up Chicago Media Angels, because I wanted to give you each an opportunity to share something that you've done to innovate, or that specifically maybe now. I know, Jeff, you have a really cool concert that happens tonight. If you want to talk about that, or Lisa, sure, feel free. And then we're going to switch over. Once you speak, I just want to say a couple more things before we leave, you guys. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about what you've got going on.
Sure. So like so many of you, I've been working out of my house for the last month, trying to find ways to maintain socialization from a distance. And I was having a handful of different, happy hours, sitting here drinking my whiskey with my friends, realizing I was seeing them more often now than I had been, even when we were allowed to see each other in person, because we just bounce onto the screen every night. And I was trying to think of a different way to engage with them. And at the same time I was doing that, I was writing to my clients and encouraging them to find ways to generate revenue, specifically the music clients who have been grounded due to all the stay-at-home orders and the shutdowns of live performances around the country. And so what I decided to do was invite one of my clients to join my friends in a Zoom meeting and to perform for us. And we would all throw in $20 to try to help that artist out directly into their Venmo or Zelle account. And it actually turned into kind of a bigger thing where 20 or 30 more friends wanted to join us, and that artist performed for an hour. We turned it into kind of a storyteller's event, a little bit more intimate than it would be on Facebook Live or Instagram Live. So we invited everybody in, the artist performed, and it was great. And then we did it again the next week, and it had about 100 people join us. And then we're doing it again tonight. So every Thursday, I'm putting on a Zoom concert called Concerts from My Couch. Technology on both ends, bringing people together, giving us a chance to engage with an artist, and giving that artist a chance to, offset some of the losses that they've suffered by not being able to be on the road or to get into the studio. So if anyone wants to join, they're welcome to email me, jbecker@smbtrials.com. Maybe you could put that info somewhere for all of us.
We'll have.
Oh, holy cow!
Hey, there's everybody's information.
Wow.
Yeah, we're really excited. And I'm going to say who tonight's guests are, because they're friends of mine. And I love Jay Ivy, who's a spoken word artist. You've seen him live, actually, in films, as well as heard his poetry. So I'm excited to see him, and his dear wife, a good friend of mine, Tari Teray. So I'm excited to see him tonight from Concert.
Dynamic duo tonight, yeah.
Dynamic duo, yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, anything you want to share before we jump off?
You're on mute.
I'm going to get her.
Yeah, thank you. I guess when I told you the pollen is very high here, so I have been trying to drink my water and clear my throat. So apologies for that. I do have a podcast. It's called The Legality, and it is on pretty much anywhere where you can find podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. It's up there. But anyway, I definitely talk about things that are of interest to people in the entertainment industry. The latest episode, which is up today, is about how COVID-19 has affected employees and small businesses, and also extending those rights, which is really important for people in the film and television and music industry whose tours may have been canceled, whose shows might have been canceled or what have you. So independent contractors who were not able to collect unemployment are now able to collect unemployment under the CARES Act. So that is the latest edition of my podcast, which is up today. And again, it's called The Legality, LEGALITEA. And please, have a listen. And I also interview a lot of entertainment notables about what they do and who they are, how they got there, and something about their business.
That's great. That's good. So Lisa, I'm going to ask you to hang out. We're going to, before we go. So while we were talking, a couple of things that really stood out is that the contract is really important, and it is the roadmap, and it's how you're able to memorialize the agreement. And while you were all saying memorialize, I couldn't help but hear moralize it, like legalize it. So I just wanted to share that, my silliness, but maybe it's a way for people to remember, memorialize it, like put it in writing. Let that be your friend. Don't be afraid of it. It protects everybody, not just you or the other person, but it protects all parties in the end. And especially for friends who want to work together and go into business together, right? Whether it's music or filmmaking, keep the friendship solid by literally doing the contracts off the front side, and then everybody can relax and be themselves on the back end. So I really want to thank you all, Tom Levins, Jeffrey Becker, and Lisa Bonner, for joining us today on this, CCE Global Industry Talk, specifically business. So right now, you guys have a great evening. Maybe we'll all see each other on Concerts from My Couch at Jeff's virtual.
Love the name. That's a great name.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Virtual venue. Everybody grabs their wine and you see the families. It's really wonderful. So if I don't see you soon, I'll see you maybe on there tonight. If awesome. Lisa, we're going to keep you on board to have a little bit more of a conversation with Breon Wells.
Oh, okay.
So thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
And we're going to bring up Breon by himself here for just a moment for an introduction. Hi there. So again, we're really happy for those of you who are tuned in. I hope that some of your questions were answered, but here's where we're going to delve into the PPP. Let's talk about it. Here's Breon Wells of the Daniel Initiative. How you doing over there, sir?
I'm good. Absolutely good. Thank you for having me.
Good. Like I said, I'd love to have Lisa engage a little bit if her time will allow, but absolutely. I want you to tell us just a little bit about who you are and why you established the Daniel Initiative.
Yeah, so, I'm really big on not conflating what I do with who I am. And so I often start with the fact that I was born really overseas. I was an Air Force brat. And so I was born in Spain, lived in Turkey, Germany, and England. And so the pivotal part of that is it caused cultural competency from a global perspective to be kind of a default, which was a privilege that I was able to have. But also I come at this work as we're talking about how the stimulus package affects creatives. I am a creative from, 7 years old. I was a musician playing in the church, grew up playing in churches. I'm a songwriter. I was in band, marching band, played a number of instruments. And so it was that artsy side that clicked for me and made things happen, for me in the world. What I ended up doing is embarking in a professional life in politics and in policy more specifically. So I spent 8 years on Capitol Hill working for Congressman Al Wynn of Maryland, Senator Bill Nelson of Florida, and then 6 years on the Senate Armed Service Committee. And one of the things that stood out to me during that time was that diversity and inclusion was lacking at at every level, but particularly as well in the policy realm. And for multi-marginalized communities, right, for people of color, for women, for faith-based institutions, legislative protections matter. And not only the crafting of them, but it was important for us to be at the table. So when I was on staff at one point, I was the only person of color in one of my offices really working. So that meant that I was the, de facto Asian American, which is problematic, right? I was the Latino American. I was in some cases making up for these other spaces that were there. So when I left the Capitol Hill and I started the Daniel Initiative, it was really with this understanding that we need to multiply the number of directly impacted people who are sitting at these policy tables, who know how to navigate these state legislators, who know how to navigate these nexuses of power, and then allow us to take that to get the protections that we need. And so that's what the Daniel Initiative does. We've been February 12th of this year, we turned 8 years old. And we've been able to develop social impact and legislative strategies for our clients. So that's women-led organizations, faith-based organizations, organizations led by people of color, creatives are in there. Some of our clients are influencers. We help government engagement make sense for them.
See, this is really exciting and this is great. And in a way, we had you in our virtual backstage green room, but Jeff Becker because you worked on the Music Modernization Act. So this is something that is steeped in who you are, and we really are also grateful to have you here to talk to us. I'm going to go ahead and bring back Lisa Bonner, if she can hang out with us for a little bit, and let you guys talk a little bit. First of all, let's just start with some questions. With the first question that came up, even while you were talking, Breon, talk to us a little bit about PPP, and then I'm going to let you guys kind of engage as some questions come up.
Yeah, so I'll start the conversation here. Specifically in what it does for creatives, embedded in our definition and our DNA, creatives are innovators, right? We're whether you're thought leaders, whether we know most of the creators come from this entertainment, an artsy background, but we're really pushing these narratives, and the salacious side, the appealing side to what we do is that, due to us bucking against the system or doing things in non-conventional ways, we are at the forefront of society. The downside of that is government is often made for the status quo and who's in their direct line sight. So that means that sometimes some of these creatives end up on the outskirts, generally, of a lot of the solutions that government is trying to derive. So when we are talking about this big, massive CARES Act that Congress passed, right, $2 trillion to really try to take care of as many parts of the sectors of society that was shut down due to social distancing, due to this global pandemic. This was something to try to help stimulate the economy and help provide access to healthcare to people. And part of that was the stimulus and the individual level that some people, hopefully should have received. If you're making at $75,000 or less, you would most likely receive that $1,200 check that they were saying. What they do is anything over $75,000, when you get up to $99,000, you are then, maxed out of being able to receive those benefits. And it also additionally gives you $500. Here's where language matters, per child, not per dependent, which is something I think we ought to think about, because especially in some contexts, you got, grandma is raising some of these children, or you have grandmas in the care of some of these homes, and they're in this need where that $500 could have been used to take care of grandma and grandpa and auntie, or those with medical conditions that were not 16 or under. But additionally, it expanded in the CARES Act unemployment insurance, that eligibility. And so, you know, you have creatives, you have gig economy workers, you have some of these independent contractors who are considered now eligible for unemployment benefits, and it extended that span of time that you could be able to put or ask for that. The final thing then on the business side, because we know that we have creatives and we have these artists who are also employers, right? And so the PPP, which is the Payment Protection Program, this is something that was a new program that was under the 7A loan family in the small business community. And the importance of it is it's meant to try to keep payrolls flowing so that people can continue to employ these people, and incentivizes that. And so, you know, that at first was limited in its definition and scope. And even up till today, like just before I got on here, the Small Business Administration has been putting out clarifications on almost a daily basis because there are many people on the margins. And one of the biggest things that happened today then is they made that clarification that independent contractors and self-employed people are able to access PPP. Religious institutions are able to access PPP. We know some creatives are musicians in the church, right? And they're on the church's payroll, and they're home, some of them now, because of this. Their churches can apply, and it doesn't make a distinction as it used to in secular versus non-secular functions. So that becomes important. If you're like a daycare, you know, if you're a daycare worker at some of these churches, you know, they will be able to cover you as well. I can talk about who ends up on the margins later, but, you know, I wanted to start us off on a positive note,
right?
As who is covered and what this CARES Act does.
Well, I would say that, one, that's good news. And I know that you let us know that you had to take a quick call because you were getting an update. That's fantastic. But Lisa also brought up, that's how you got roped back in, that you brought up the CARES Act. And I just wanted to have you share a little information. I know maybe you had a conversation or a call earlier in the week, what your experience has been with clients or just in general. Yes, Lisa. Where is she? There.
CARES Act.
Yeah.
Hi. So Breon spoke mostly about the CARES Act. That was what his last presentation was about. So he spoke about all of that. One of the things that I really did want to mention that Breon didn't touch on, and a lot of people are overlooking a portion of the Small Business Administration's benefits that are available to them, because everybody is now really worried about the pandemic and everything that is available now for COVID-19. But the Small Business Administration was put into effect to help small businesses to get onto their feet. So there is a myriad of loans that are not available, and that are not really even being talked about right now. Right. And this is really important because as of this morning, or last night on the news, they were saying, oh, by midnight, we're going to run out of money, that the $365 million that they had set aside for SBA loans under COVID, right? Under the CARES Act. Well, guess what? That's just that. But there's a whole bunch of other loans that are available from the SBA that people aren't talking about, such as a disaster loan. A disaster loan is available under any circumstances, whether it's a tornado that has touched down, as long as the area that where you working has been declared an economic disaster, then you are unable to apply for that loan. So in this instance, we already know we are in a disaster, right? Because it's a nationwide disaster, and Governor Kemp has recently declared one. So you can go to, and it's funny because I was talking to some people about it and the banks about it. I was up there the other day depositing a check, and I just really wanted to test really what the banker was, going to say. And so I walked into Bank of America, and they said something like, well, they had the language about the Payroll Protection Act up there. I'm like, okay. So I go and I deposit the checks, whatever, come back out. And she says, oh, can I help you with something? I was like, yeah. I said, I was wondering, can you give me any information on a disaster loan? And she said, what? No clue what I'm talking about, right? So, and I didn't think that she knew. And matter of fact, it wasn't even on, my on the forefront of my mind, I just happened to be writing a book about all of this at the time right now. So I just happened to be going through, and I was talking to my accountant. I was like, I called her up and I was like, why isn't anybody talking about this? And she was like, absolutely. And so if you do get turned down for the disaster loan, there's a possibility that you can still apply for an emergency grant, economic injury disaster loan, which is the EIDL, which is available for 10. You can, if you even get turned down for the disaster loan, this is an emergency fund that is available for $10,000. So I just want to make sure, and there's also a lot of state and local programs and grants that are available for people out there. So for instance, Shea Moisture has something, anything, all of the, and that's for just basically women. I believe it's women entrepreneurs, Black women entrepreneurs. But what I want to make sure to tell people is that there are so many grants and opportunities to apply for money right now, loans and everything that people just aren't talking about. So forget that. It's great if you got that first wave of 365 million, but understand that there's a lot more money that's earmarked from city programs, state programs, local programs. Like I said, grants, Amazon has a grant, Facebook has a grant. So there are a lot of other opportunities for economic relief that are out there that people just aren't talking about.
And I wanted to add just to exactly what Lisa said, with EIDL. So it gives you, while you apply for the loan.
That's the disaster loan. If people, I just want to make sure that they understand that.
Oh yes, the economic loan.
Yes.
That gives you the ability, while you're waiting for the determination on the grant, you can get a cash advance of up to $10,000. Right?
Yep.
That helps for immediate.
Good clarification.
And the very important part of that is, just like the PPP, which allows for loan forgiveness, that EIDL, what you get in that cash advance will not have to be paid back. That is, if you get rejected for whatever reason. I will say this: the bad news is PPP and EIDL ran out of money today, and Congress is still trying to get this stuff together to figure out this refill, if you will, that they need to put back in there. What I would say, though, is still apply anyway. You can apply for both the PPP and EIDL grants. You just can't use them for the same thing. And so what we are trying to encourage folks to do is apply for EIDL and PPP, use PPP for your payroll costs, and then you can use EIDL for some with more flexibility for your operational expenses, right? You get both. And it's more important to be in the line. Even if they don't have money right now, get in line. Make sure that you are counted, because, I cover creatives, but Saudi, as you know, we do a lot of lobbying on behalf of people in voting rights, criminal justice, transformation, right? A lot of broad things. But we also find this same narrative when we're talking about creatives. Often it is Black and brown folks that are on the margins. And so when I'm developing solutions as a policy writer, and former Hill staffer, my gaze was always women of color. Why? Because if we fix things and do right in our solution building for women of color, it turns into dividends for everything else, right? Because sometimes it's these women of color that are the providers in the household. In some cases, it is these women of color that are taking care of the kids. They're doing these things. And so solutions have to be, as we're approaching it, it has to be very strategically with the people in mind that are often the most forgotten.
That's powerful, Brianne, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And Lisa, for you to expand upon these other resources, right, that are not being talked about. And unfortunately, and I don't get into politics or anything like that, but we really have to just do a lot of research. Whether it was talking about researching your attorney, talking to friends, finding out from people, because people have knowledge, and that knowledge, when you learn it and you find out, it is powerful, right? Because it gives you different ways to go that maybe we don't know everything, Right. So it's really brilliant that you're able to share that. And I think just to kind of button up, as I want to be respectful of your time, and I know that you guys are working, talk to us a little bit about, how do you know if you qualify? That was like something I wanted just people to, because some people are like, it sounds lofty. Is it for me? And especially as a creative. So if you could just speak to that, and I would open that question up to both of you, and then we'll wrap up. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'll say, one, this is a continuing conversation. Emphasis on continuing conversation. Like every day, and where's my document? Every day, I get like these 39 pages of clarifications by the SBA that is trying to clarify what they did. And you have to remember, again, government is always going to look at what's in its immediate line sight. And so often there's a lot that is missed that they have to then interpret, that they have to make sure they provide clarification on. So since it's a work in progress, one, I would not be so quick to dismiss yourself from that. Again, I'm going to say apply. At worst, they can say no. But to Lisa's point, you still have community, local sort of institutions, even for artists, where people in the community level have stepped up.
Yes.
And really have begun to provide support systems. Is it enough? No, but it is something. And it and it's a measure. And so, but at least by you getting that determination, try, go out there for it. Be as bold as possible. The other thing I will say, though, is some people are fearful because, when we're talking about whether it's a PPP loan or even on the individual stimulus that they're getting, right? Some people are scared, like what happens if wages are garnished for like student loans, because we know that creatives, more than half of our creative cohorts are very highly educated, which means you've got probably some sort of student loan. You have a relationship with Sally Mae or Navient, as their name is now, that is not ideal. That being said, it's important to clarify that part of the CARES Act puts a stop to you having to pay these loans up until September 30th, 2020, and the interest that is being accrued on there. And it does not make you ineligible for even these PPP loans when you're talking about, some of these things that you have to report. When it comes to the individual side and your stimulus, hopefully if they have on record your direct deposit, for you to be able to do direct deposit, you'll get it sooner. If it's a check, we are praying that comes sooner than later. And you'll also want to lift up prayers for the United States Postal Service.
Yes.
Oh God.
Okay. On that note, and this was really key, and I want you to address this, and that is that for the giggers, for the freelancers, the W-9 form.
Yeah.
So go ahead, talk about that.
Yeah. So what we find and what they have clarified today is, and what you need to do if you're interested, if you're an employer, even if you're self-employed, fill out your 2019 tax form, even if you have not yet, right? Even though June is not due till June 15th, because the information on there at Schedule C is what you're going to need when you apply for these loans to be able for them to make that determination of how much you will need and who you employ, not necessarily the individuals per se, but what that money looks like of the people that you have to keep on payroll. And so again, please make sure that you fill out that tax, that 2019 tax form, because it will help even if you don't immediately turn it in until June 15th. There are some critical parts that you will need to answer some of these other questions now that just today they've expanded to ensure that independent contractors and that self-employed people are there. The last thing I'll say, real quick on this is a time we know that representation matters.
Yes.
It was the same thing with the Music Modernization Act, right? A lot of people don't know, before the Music Modernization Act, it was the Songwriters Equity Act. And we didn't have enough support necessarily on the ground, eyes, to make it as sexy and compelling to these members of Congress to do right by these songwriters, right? But once we finally got our stuff together years later, we were able to make that pass. And it was due to these industry people, but then creative like you who lifted your voices to Congress. So if you don't find yourself covered in the CARES Act And given that they are working on CARES 2, it is important now that you call your members of Congress, that you call your senators, and that you put on their radar that, hey, this is not working for me. Because I guarantee you there's some blind spots that they have not covered. And additionally, this is a good time for us to come together, right? The Daniel Initiative, we provide spaces and listservs, right, for us to always engage and figure out how we can advocate strategically together to say, for instance, when we get out of COVID-19, there is a real conversation that needs to be had about modernizing the Small Business Administration, modernizing the banking industry, because we know that creatives, sometimes, yes, we have these tax things and these tax forms that we need, and others, you know, if you're doing Cash App and Venmo, we bank differently, right? We do these exchanges economically differently. And so there is a time for us to rethink. Yes. I'm not saying loosening or you know, engaging in loosening or tightening. We definitely need to rethink some of these systems. And this global pandemic has been the great exposer to a number of the things that we've needed.
Lisa, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, Breanne covered everything. It was great. Thank you for having me. I do have to hop off because I have to call at 4. This went a little longer. I was happy to sit in on this extra, but I do want to say thank you to, no worries. So thank you for having me. Thank you, Breanne. It's a pleasure to meet you. And thank you to all the audience. And if you have any questions, let us know. Check out my podcast. We have a whole podcast on this whole thing that just came out today. All right, I gotta go, but thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. You know, Breanne, I want to just touch on, because you spoke about the CEO of PayPal was on the other day, and he was talking about how individuals and creatives, for sure, they can see who's giving, you know, and they can see who, when I say who's giving, they're actually able to see how many people are starting to share money with families and friends and things like that. But they also know over time, before we were hit by this, that independent contractors and freelancers were using their platform in order to pay or get paid. And so I think even the founders of some of these organizations, whether it's Cash App, you know, or PayPal, Venmo, are also starting to rethink their model. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's so timely, and it's so, it speaks to how creatives have been utilizing systems that work for them when the bank not necessarily been their friend. I think that, you know, going forward, the pandemic, if anything, has shined a light on a lot of blind spots in a lot of dark places. And that's not just on people of brown and black,
right?
Literally where there has just been no light. So thank you for sharing your light and wisdom today. I do believe that this information is not only valuable for those people who are watching right now, but we do archive on YouTube, on our Center for Creative Entrepreneurship channel. And at that place, we can always check back into, what did he say again? You know, so.
Yeah, and you know, thank you for what you guys do at CCE, because you know it's very important putting on conversations like this. I think that now people have more time than they even would like to have, which means that this is a good time to continue perfecting your craft, right? Because what you bring and the light you all bring to this world is brilliant. It is necessary. It is positive, right? And we need it. But this is also the time to make sure that you can continue doing the good work that you do. And an important part of that is making sure that governments are a part of that strategy. We can no longer just say, well, I'm a creator, so I'm just going to solely focus on doing my craft, and I'll trust these members of Congress, or I'll trust these state legislators, or I'll trust local government to do what is right. Every major, from the civil rights movement to the development of the VA, it came because people made noise. There has not been a time where government has been like, oh, I'm proactively see that this is a problem, and therefore I'm going to just engage in here. So we have a time to lift our voices. And to your point, we should lift our voices. What we do at the Daniel Initiative, we don't just lift our voices against those who might be doing harm, what we may call on the other side of the table, right? But we also hold the feet to the fire to our allies,
Yeah.
we stay engaged and say, hey, so to your point, it is, how are we reaching out to the CEO of PayPal, reaching out to Cash App and Venmo and saying, hey, we're going to go talk to the SBA about modernizing, but we need you to use your resources, your capital, you know, because we are constituents in one sense of yours.
That's right.
We need you saying the same thing that we're saying when you go into these meetings.
Yeah, this is brilliant because as artist, as a producer, as an artist myself, it is so empowering to empower other creatives that what you're saying is not like, I always say, this isn't about politics with the work that we do, but as citizens of the US, period, it's part of our obligation to keep that conversation going back and forth, and especially with creatives, because they may not know what we need. And in order for them to know what we need to communicate it. So I think for the very, very top part of this show, we talked about communication, research, and developing relationships. And I'm finding that that is a consistent theme. So thank you again, Brianne, for taking this time. I know you're working diligently on behalf of all of us. Thank you so much. And listen, be well, take care. And, we're all practicing social distancing, but if you have to go out, careful, wear a mask. If you're inside, yay.
Right. And I will make sure that I send to you, Sadia, a link of some resources where people can continue to engage in, whether that's the small business community, small business administration, some of these other spaces. And also shameless plug for the Daniel Initiative. And we're not the only ones, but the Daniel Initiative is always about making sure that multi-marginalized communities have that seat at that government relations table. So, if you're trying to figure out how government works and how to best make that inroad to talk about not politics, but policy, which is a difference, to talk about the policies, the public policies that impact you, we're here to work with you.
Well, we're happy that you're here. Thank you so much. Brianne Wells of the Daniel Initiative. Everyone, listen, thank you so much for tuning in on this Thursday. We appreciate you being with us, and by all means, share this resource with a friend or a colleague, and let everybody know that the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, it is providing resources, information, education to help creative entrepreneurs expand their business, become better business people, and put more creatives out there to work in the world, in the workforce. So have a great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.